Hey guys, Blood Moon Bobby here with another camera review, and today we are looking at Canon's first APS-C fixed lens compact camera, the G1X Mark III. So, if you've been paying attention to the camera series, the G1X has always been known for their big sensor compacts. Up to this point, the original G1X and the Mark II cameras have used 1.5-inch CMOS sensors, which are a little bit smaller than the APS-C cam size sensors you would get in something like the Canon 80D, for instance. But this is the first G1X camera to actually have a 24.3, or I should say an APS-C sensor, and this one in particular has 24.3 megapixels. The camera itself actually has a shorter zoom. It's a 24 to 72 millimeter lens, which that's kind of expected when they make a camera with a bigger sensor, particularly APS-C size, because on one hand, a shorter focal length usually means better quality because there's lesser junk in the way of the lens design, and also the reason it's smaller is so that the image circle is wide enough so you won't get anything like vignetting. So it's kind of short, but at the same time, for a premium compact camera, especially these days, it's understandable. And the sensor has a ISO from 100 to 25,600. And good news for viewfinder lovers, the G1X Mark III brings back some form of viewfinders. So you might remember the original G1X had a optical viewfinder, but it was one of those compact optical viewfinders, which was small and distorted, and as Mike Perlman, the former photo journalist for Techno Buffalo, said, it was basically useless. And then the G1X Mark II took it away, but in this place, you had to buy Canon's expensive electronic viewfinder, but now the G1X Mark III has that viewfinder built in. So, so for those who want much steadier shots, you have the option. And of course, the G1X Mark III has a screen on its own. It's a 3-inch touchscreen, a variangle screen with a 1,040,000 dot resolution. So it's not the sharpest in the industry, but still very nice resolution. And the camera itself will have 7 frames per second continuous shooting with autofocus and 9 frames per second with fixed AF. So not the fastest, but still 7 frames per second, still perfectly fine. I use a Nikon D300S, which has 7 frames per second when I do sports shooting, and shots from that camera come out pretty good most of the time. And the Mark III will have built-in Wi-Fi. It will have 1080p 60p video, no headphone or no mic jack, so audio lovers beware. And it'll have a free-stop ND filter for stills and movies. So me personally, I think this is a pretty cool sounding camera. It is really nice to see Canon finally make an APS-C, a compact with an APS-C size sensor. So as I said, the focal length's kind of short, but I think most people who buy these kind of cameras know what they're getting into. And in this case, maybe having a shorter focal length might actually be a benefit, because the aperture on the G1X Mark III only goes from f2.8 to 5.6. And now, of course, some are going to say, well, hey, if they put a faster lens on it, it'll, drive the cost of the camera. But for a camera that costs $1,300, I would expect a much faster aperture, especially telephoto, and only 5.6. That's honestly, f5.6, that's like something on a kit lens you would get for an entry-level DSLR. I mean, yes, it'll drive up the price, but it's really absurd when you look at something like the Sony RX100 Mark V, which, yes, that's a 1-inch sensor camera. It's a smaller sensor than the Canons, but that the lens on the RX100 Mark V goes from f1.8 to 2.8. So I would have liked to have seen something like, let's say, even like f2.8 to 4. I know some people are going to say f2.8 is still too slow for 1299, but even if it was like an f2.8 to 4, it should still be respectable. Like, especially if you want to do quick and dirty portraits. Not that the portraits are going to look bad, but you know, f5.6, like, you're not going to get as nice looking a background as you can if you were able to get something like f4 or f2.8. So you gotta keep that in mind. I mean, granted, a 3x optical zoom is definitely better than something like the Nikon Coolpix 8, which only had a 28 millimeter lens. And I should say all the focal lengths I've mentioned in this video, the 24 to 72 in the G1X Mark III, that's obviously 35 millimeter equivalent. So, oh, I also forgot to mention that the G1X Mark III will be dust and water resistant, just like Canon's higher end cameras, like the 5D Mark IV. So, yeah, so if you get caught in the rain, you should be good. I mean, obviously, you're not going to want to spill your 7-Eleven big gulp of soda on it, but just having that peace of mind, if you're shooting out in the rain, you should be fine. So, I mean, just don't be out in the rain too much. And the G1X Mark III will have the dual pixel AF, which is basically, without getting super technical, it's basically where the photodiodes in the G1X Mark III are actually split into two, or and collects varying amounts of light. So I honestly have to try that again though, because I think I had mixed results with the dual pixel AF on prior Canon cameras, but I'll have to see that on like a more modern Canon. If it's much better, please let me know in the comments. And video wise, 1080p 60p video, so it's a nice resolution. You'll get 60p, basically you'll get really nice motion. I am a little disappointed there's no form of 4K on this camera. I mean, I know, again, it would drive up the price, but at this point, we live in, a world where you can get compact cameras that have 4K built in. If you look at the RX100 Mark V, again, it has 4K and it's $1,000, so it should be fair to expect some 4K video on the Canon G1X Mark III. Obviously, people who buy this camera, because the G1X Mark III, this is more for somebody who owns, like, let's say, a Canon 5D Mark IV that just needs a little buddy, a little spare camera on days where they don't want to lug around a big DSLR. So 1080p, 60p, you should be okay, but it would be nice to have 4K, because especially since, we live in an era where you can get a smartphone, or even, like I said, the RX100 Mark V, which costs $1,000, and it has 4K. So, yeah, kind of a weird admission. The lack of a headphone jack, it is annoying, especially since I use a microphone when I go out video recording. But like I said, I guess the reason Canon didn't include that is because, hey, this is meant to be a little buddy for your 5D Mark IV or your 1DX Mark II. This isn't meant to be your daily drivers. So I guess that's why they didn't include it. So overall, G1X Mark III, pretty good camera. Pretty good sounding, obviously. I haven't had the chance to try it out yet. I would like to see how well that dual pixel AF works. It is nice to have some form of hybrid AF, but it needs to work pretty well. So that's I'll have to say, pretty nice sounding camera. It is a good update to the G1X series, going from a 1.5 inch CMOS sensor to APS-C size. And I guess one of the benefits, unlike if you bought a mirrorless camera, if they increase the sensor size, you wouldn't have to worry about vignetting when you bring your lenses on, because in this case it's a fixed lens camera, so they can change the sensor size, and the end user doesn't have to worry about having to go out and buy new lenses, for example. So that's pretty cool. As I said, the Mark III will cost $1,300. Which, fair chunk of change, but then again, and with the specs, with that, f2.8 to 5.6, even though I think it should be faster, and the APS-C sensor, or it is fair to expect something in like the $1,000 range. So that's all. And thanks for watching. Please like or dislike this video, and please subscribe to Blood Moon Bobby. And thanks for watching.